There is a story. It's a little bit of a joke, but not at the same time. When a young boy had a favorite toy, and then suddenly somebody, an adult, came up to this child and took the toy away, the favorite toy. And this little boy spent the entire life trying to find it. And then suddenly he became a very famous engineer and invented a time machine and decided to come back to that moment and find the toy and get the toy back. So he comes back to that moment, looks for this adult, and then sees the boy with the toy. Ah, this is my toy. Takes the toy and goes back. There is a thought experiment called Theseus paradox. According to the legend, Theseus, the mystical Greek king and founder of Athens, rescued the citizens and escaped into a ship. Each year, the Athenians commemorated this event, this rescue, by taking the ship out of storage and sailing it around the harbor. Over time, parts of the ship decayed, and they were replaced with new parts, until eventually every single part of the ship had been replaced. So the question of the story is it still the same ship? If not, at what point did it become a different ship? Philosophers have debated this paradox for centuries, leading to many discussions about identity, essentially about identity and change. Imagine you have access to a time machine, but you can only travel to the future and only for 10 minutes and then go back. What would you like to see there? And the most important questions, what would give you hope in humanity? What would you like to see there so that you will be hopeful? Do you imagine the future world as familiar to the one that we have, or different? What would you choose? The world that would look the same in 50, 100, 200 years, or the world that would look different? The idea of time travel and its philosophical implications fascinated thinkers for a long time. And the rabbinic world is not an exception. There is a Talmudic story associated with the Torah portion that we just read. Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, two prominent rabbis. Rav Yehuda, they provide us with this Talmudic science fiction. In the Torah, if you remember, God asked Moses not to look at God's face. And rabbis assumed that Moses would turn away. So, in the ancient Middle Eastern mythology, there is a beautiful metaphor for time. And I told you once before that. So, the timeline, according to Middle Eastern legends, in the time we are going backwards towards the future. So you can see the past and present, but you cannot see the future, right? So this is how God. This is why when God asks Moses to turn around, what God really shows is future. So that's the basis of this science fictional rabbinic story. Here is the text, Babylonian Talmud, Menachot 29b. So another piece of background, you can see letters on the bottom of the page, and this is how Torah is written. So Torah is written by letters, and if you can see the scribe, that when scribe writes Torah, there are some additions to some of the letters. So they're called crowns. So you can see that on some letters there are some chupchiks on top. So let's read the story. When Moses ascended on high, on Mount Sinai, he found the Holy One, blessed be He, sitting and tying crowns on the letters of the Torah. Moses said before God, Master of the universe, who is preventing you from giving Torah without these additions? God said to him, there is a man who is destined to be born after many generations, and his name is Akiva ben Yosef, famous Rabbi Akiva. He is destined to derive from each and every crown of this, or thorn of these crowns, mounts hundreds and hundreds of interpretations. Okay, Moses said before God, well, Master of the universe, show him to me. God said to him, return behind you. Moses went, suddenly appeared in the future, and went and sat at the end of the 8th row in Rabbi Akiva's study, and didn't understand a word of what they were saying. Moses' strength weakened. So a few things here. The 8th row is for the brightest students always sat next to the teacher. The 8th row is the last row. Just saying. When Rabbi Akiva arrived at the discussion of one of the matters, his students said to him, my teacher, from where do you derive this? And Rabbi Akiva said to him, this is a law transmitted to Moses from Sinai. When Moses heard this, his mind was put at ease. Moses returned and came before the Holy One, blessed be He, and said before him, Master of the universe, you have a man with such a great man as this, and yet you still choose to give Torah through me? Why? And God said to him, be silent. This is my intention. So when I read this story for the first time, I couldn't believe it. Moses doesn't recognize the Torah. Wasn't it he who received it? Wasn't it he who wrote it? And some even say that he received not just the text, but also all the interpretations. Well, time travel to the future can be very scary. And we could find ourselves strangers and not knowing what to do in the future world. But even scarier is to find the world unchanged, I think. Facing the same problems and repeating the same mistakes. The story of Moses not understanding the religion and teaching he himself started is the best lesson one may have about history. It's not the change that is bad for the world, but the lack of development and not learning lessons from our past. As a part of the human condition, this is part of who we are. We live with a paradox. On the one hand, we have many unanswered questions about the past and often blame the past. Blame others or sometimes God for injustice. On the other hand, we accuse God of not, and also we accuse God for not looking after humanity and allowing millions of people to die from wars, earthquakes, diseases. But on the other hand, we ask the same God for protection and strength. Rabbis who chose reading for Pesach many years ago, knew about this paradox. And we live in a world far from perfect. And we reflect on our past, our present, trying to understand how humanity and history work. This is why our sages chose Exodus 33, where Moses asked same questions. And in the words of Sidur Lev Chadash, today we give thanks for the coming of spring and the deliverance of our ancestors from slavery. Both speak to us of hope. Winter doesn't last forever, and oppression doesn't endure. As there is a force in nature that makes for renewal, so there is a power in history that makes for redemption. It's a power that comes from God and is latent within us. who are created in the divine image. May our celebration of this festival strengthen it. Let us always be among those who struggle for freedom. May we never cease to hope for the Passover of the future, when all that is good shall prevail. And may we never cease to labor for the coming of that day. One of my teachers used to say, as a rabbi, as a Jew, I am commanded to hope. We call ourselves Israel, which means wrestling with God. And it's unclear whether wrestling with God when God is on your side or wrestling against God. And the same ambiguity is in Hebrew as well as in English. It means that like Moses, we are allowed to argue, not just allowed, but sometimes must argue and wrestle for a better world, not allowing any force to destroy it, and not allowing ourselves to lose hope in the future. Hope is not blind hope, however, is not a blind belief that somehow everything will be okay. Hope is an inspiration we get from the past, that change is possible. To hope is to know that many people before you lived through unbelievably difficult times, and they survived. Jewish people read the story of Exodus during difficult times. Jewish people read the story of Exodus during the Spanish Inquisition. They read the story of Exodus in the Warsaw Ghetto and in the Soviet Union. This story resonated with them and gave them hope that it's possible to improve the world. And they did what they could to make it happen. Because of the past generations, we have the world we live in today. Because of the people in the past and their hope for the better future, today we have laws forbidding slavery. Because of the people's work in the past, today we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Although many countries don't see it as important, there are enough of us who do and work tirelessly to respect it. Although there are still estimated 50 million people worldwide in modern slavery, there are many of us who fight for their freedom, and so should all. This world is far from perfect, but it is much better than it once was. Today is our turn to leave it to future generations. Let's try to leave it in a better shape as we received it. Because as Jews, we are commanded to have hope in a better future. Shabbat Shalom and Pesach Sameach.